Before working on any firearm, make sure the magazine is empty and removed. Also make sure the chamber is empty and the firearm is unloaded.
We're going to do the reassembly. All right, reassembly is just about everything just in reverse. So I'm going to start with the trigger, install the trigger, put back in your mag catch. Remember, you got to have it depressed and then rotate. Now it's going to be clockwise. So with the mag catch installed, all right, next step is to put the fire controls back in, sear and disconnector. To do that, you're going to lay the disconnector like so. Sear sets right on the top of the disconnector. All right, grab the back of it, put down in there and line up into your hole. Take your sear pin. Now your sear pin's got a little notch. You got to make sure your notch is facing back to the holes. You're going to line up. Sear pin's in. Okay, next step is to install the sear spring. I set the sear spring in its little notch on the bottom and set it right on top of the sear foot of the sear. All right, then I put the mainspring housing on, put the mainspring housing on a little bit to hold the sear spring in place. Next step is the hammer. Make sure you lightly lubricate the hammer pins and sear pin. Okay, make sure that hammer's all the way forward or you'll have a bear of a time to get the mainspring housing back in. Okay, from there, I go ahead and put on the grip safety, line back up the mainspring housing. Don't forget about your grip safety, your mag well here. There's a set screw on the bottom. So you want to make sure, you're going to have to check the tension on that when it's reassembly. Okay, these right here are a little tricky, so you got to depress them, put your pin back in, use a non-mooring hammer to get it started. Then you can take your punch, okay, get that started. So we're going to put the grip safety in. All right, I always, on this particular model, I take the right side thumb safety, set it in there. That helps holds my grip safety in place for I can get the mag well and the mainspring housing pin back in. All right, to do this, it's a little tricky on this model. So you got to depress it, get your pin started back in, take a non-mooring hammer, give it a few taps, she'll get started. Then you take a punch and get her flushed out. All right, with that in, all right, and my right side thumb safety in. Next step is to put the left side in. To do that, you cock the hammer, okay, and install the left side. Now you're going to have to bring the thumb safeties back in the halfway between the fire and the safe mode, okay. Then you can take a small screwdriver, small punch, and you're going to depress the plunger spring. You can take your screwdrivers or your non-mooring hammer, give it a little tap in the back corner of the thumb safeties to make sure the tongue and groove joints in there tight. Next, now we're going to reassemble the slide. First thing you're going to want to do is install the extractor. Put the extractor into its channel. Press away and down to get it in its groove because there's going to be tension on it. Okay. Make sure it's clocking, it's not clocked sideways in the back of the slide. Press down on it till it's flush with the radius of the back of the slide here. Next step is to install the firing pin. Okay, the firing pin has a taper. The taper always goes, the tighter end always goes up against the back of the firing pin. That holds the firing pin onto the spring onto the pin. Okay, next I'm going to depress the firing pin. Okay, install the firing pin stop. Keep pressure on it. Take my little firing pin and extractor tool, depress it. Firing pin stops in place. Next is we're going to install the barrel and barrel bushing. All right, barrel goes in. Make sure you put a little lubricant in the locking lugs, the rails, the disconnector slot, or on the disconnector rail, and also a little bit on the outside surface of the barrel where the bushing rides. Okay, put the bushing back in, rotate it all the way over, install your full-length guide rod. All right, next step is to put the recoil spring in. Now the recoil spring, this is a Wolf 12-pound recoil spring for the 9mm. It's got a closed end and an open end. The closed end always goes to the back of the guide rod. Open end always faces forward up towards the spring plug. Okay, so this is where the barrel bushing wrench comes into play. Works really good any gun with the full-length guide rod. So you're going to depress the spring with the plug on there, rotate the barrel bushing over a little bit to where everything's holding it in place, and then rotate it over. Okay, with the slide reassembled, our next step is to install it onto the frame. Now to do that, I just make sure that the guide rod's pushed down and the link is pushed forward. Slide it back onto the frame, line up the link to the slide stop hole, line it up to the disassembly reassembly notch, push in. Okay, now the slide stop is all in. Okay, from now we're going to check the fire control functions, make sure everything works properly before I put the grips back on. To do that is you put the thumb safeties up, press the trigger, make sure those are working, make sure it's working properly. Okay, take the thumb safety back down, press the trigger again, make sure the grip safety's working the way it should be, where you don't have any pressure on the grip safety. Now what I do is I press the firearm as if you're going to shoot it, pull the trigger, keep the trigger depressed, take your hand off the back of the grip safety and let go of the trigger. Okay, what that's going to do is that's going to make sure that your grip safety is disengaging and re-engaging properly. You'll feel a click and hear a click, and you actually see the grip safety move back into its neutral stance. Okay, so we know the fire controls work properly. Next step is to reinstall the grips. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the disassembly and reassembly of the 2011 A2 high capacity VZ.